and we love craft shit on this podcast, so we'll get into some craft stuff, techniques, preferences,
Okay,
styles.
you love craft. Okay, I was like, I thought you were talking about Lovecraft all of a
Oh,
sudden. I was
fuck.
like,
I
what?
honestly I hate Lovecraft. I think H.P. Lovecraft is awful. He's one of the worst writers
Mhm.
to ever live, and everybody that
Well, he's a genre
I'm
writer, like, I mean, what
I
can you
love
say?
genre. I
Yeah,
mean,
okay.
but he sucks. Like that's what I say. That's my hot take on that. I know the internet would
Wow.
not agree with that.
Already you dropped a hot take within like the first 30
Well,
seconds.
I'm easily ignorable too, so a lot of people ignore my hot takes, even though they're correct that like Lovecraft is garbage. Have you tried to read Lovecraft?
I mean, I have like I don't know. I've read a handful of short stories, and then my
That's all he
first,
has is a bunch of short stories that like are
yeah.
unbearable to read. I can't, it's like nails on a chalkboard for me to read. Like this guy cannot write a scene to save his life. Yeah.
The first time that I did a literary reading, this was for Expat Lit, back during the pandemic. Actually, I my first ever poetry reading. I went out to New York and ended up walking with a bunch of writers down to Red Hook, where Lovecraft used to live.
Oh,
And we like snapped a photo outside of his like old house, but it was like a nothing, it was like a nothing burger, sort of just like, you know, uh, like tons of dumpsters in front. So yeah, yeah, it wasn't like a glamorous photo.
yeah.
That's kind of my strongest association with Lovecraft is visiting his house in Red Hook.
At least it's that and not like the memes or whatever that people put online. I can't
Yeah.
stand the Lovecraft stuff that people pretend he's
Mhm.
great. I just roll my eyes. But whatever. We're stuck in these. We're going to talk about scenes and all that too. Yeah, getting kind of lumped into them, and what do you do with it, and like how you use it, and stuff like what happens when you are like a public artist. Like you get lumped into a scene, you get lumped into a school of like creativity,
Sure.
whatever it is.
Mhm.
You know, uh, I know I'm kind of lumped into a scene there, but I always reject it when I'm given the opportunity. So.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy, heavy, heavy.
Bored. I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! Dinner.
Resources.
Life. Friends is boring. We must not say so.
This is Andrew Whitstead, and you are listening to Heavy Board, and we're recording this on October 18th, 2025. My guest today is the writer and poet Stephanie Yue Duhem. Based in Austin and a
Mhm.
graduate of the University of Texas New Writers Project,
Mhm.
Stephanie writes essays, advice columns, and her debut poetry collection, titled Cataclysm Moves Me, I regret to say, came out just this year from House of Vlad Press, and of course is linked below, listeners. Stephanie is an associate editor at Hobart Pulp, the online literary magazine that is very familiar with literary controversy. She runs a reading series in Austin at the Community Garden Wine Bar. And on top of that, she is a great Twitter follow, listeners, where I first encountered her and her work. Stephanie, you are doing. Thanks for coming on Heavy Board.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. The first question we start this off with is the same question we ask all writers and artists that come on, which is what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? What did your parents do? How did these early years start to form, Stephanie?
Okay, cool. Wow. I like this sort of like chronological framework. Well, I had kind of a weird childhood. I was born in China, and my first home was the campus of a fine arts college. So my dad and my granddad were both artists, visual artists. My dad was primarily like a painter, and my grandfather was a sculptor, and they both were faculty at this like fine art school. And so I had kind of like, yeah, I was like kind of like a campus brat, toddler, just like going around campus with my faculty, dad, and um, I kind of have like beautiful, wonderful memories from that time. There were a lot of sculptures on the campus, so if you can imagine like just a toddler in a sculpture garden, it has like a very sort of magical, mystical resonance for me, just like remembering that stuff. Um, and then so sort of growing up, I actually, I was, I would say equally into like the visual arts. And I really like thought seriously about becoming a visual artist. But after, when we immigrated to the United States, my dad was had such a hard time making a living, what with the language barrier, and then also just like the arts being impossible to break into, especially if you don't have money, which we didn't, as immigrants. um and yeah, and so my parents like just totally sort of stamped out that line of thinking for me. And it took me a very, very long time to come back to the arts. And I talk about this a lot, but I didn't even start reading or writing seriously until I was like 28 or 29 or something like that. So yeah, a
Yeah.
long
What
detour.
when was this? When was this when you came over and then growing up for the part of your life that you did in China and then coming over to the US? What year? 90s? Like what was this? Like
Yeah, mid 90s. And yeah, I was completely schooled in the US. Like I went to, I think I went to kindergarten in China, but I went to like first
okay.
grade onwards
So you were like
in the
5 years old when you came over? Like
yeah.
five? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And what did your father end up doing when he came over here?
He did all kinds of like he really tried everything. He had a kiosk at the mall back because there used to be malls back then.
Right.
He had a kiosk at the mall where he would like sell portraits of people, either celebrities or just like if people could commission portraits. He also like drew people's houses too. Like he learned architectural, like sort of architectural drafting. And he could like do floor plans and like draw houses really well. And so like actually quite a few people commissioned drawings of their house from him, that they'd then frame and put up in the house.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, so a true immigrant story there, really like coming out of like, yeah, a prestigious position at a university and then having to come over here and start all over again, doing odd jobs and trying to use the skills, develop new skills. So there's that. What did your mother do? What did your mother do?
She was a programmer, like a computer programmer.
Was she able to work right away then when she came over here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And we actually immigrated to the US because she was in like a computer science grad program in the US.
Okay.
But they both had like stints of like working in Chinese restaurants, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Did you have the stereotypical tiger cub upbringing? Were your parents tiger parents or
I think they weren't because I do have just like I do have like artists in the family. It didn't sort of work out that way. But I think that well, this is the thing is like when you're part of a culture, right? Like Chinese American culture, for instance, like it kind of doesn't matter if you yourself don't have tiger parents. You're still like influenced, like
right,
that larger culture seeps into you. So I did feel like, well, like I hear about what their friends kids were doing or something
right.
like that. And so that does seep in. So
But they weren't like forcing you
yeah.
to play Bach on the cello like Yo-Yo Ma or whatever at the age of
No,
4. Like yeah,
no,
like yeah.
no.
The Amy Chua, Tiger
Yeah.
Mom stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, very
Interesting.
familiar.
Yeah.
Very
Which
fa-
is
and,
interesting. No,
yeah.
please go on. Please go on.
No, well, no, it's just the Amy Chua thing. I tweeted about this many years ago, but I used to have this like daydream that, and this is before I read Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. I used to have this daydream that I would have like two beautiful little daughters, and I would name them Sophia and Louisa. And I was like this was like a weird little fantasy of mine. And when I read Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother, it turns out those are the names of her daughters. And I was like, is this like epigenetic memory or something? Like, why did we have the same fucking, you know,
The synchronicities. Yeah.
disposition towards, yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. It's just so weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. When that book came
Yeah.
out and all that, was all over the place. It was just interesting
Hmm.
that everybody. It's interesting that you say though that like there's kind of residual kind
Hmm.
of, pulse
Hmm.
that comes out of the culture like
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
And I love that. We love that on this podcast because it's the intangible things like culture. Sure, there are like art pieces,
Yeah.
books, whatever you can put your hands on, but like most of it is like this unsaid even intangible thing that just kind of like an ether or a cloud like all around us and stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, that's where I get into like wokeness and stuff too on this podcast, which we can get into, but I mean, I didn't plan to ask you about it, but if it comes up, it comes up. But yeah, okay, so we have a young Stephanie immigrating here. Where did you guys immigrate? Did you immigrate down to Texas? Have you always been in
No, no, no,
Texas?
no. I actually grew up in the greater Boston area, and we moved all
Okay.
around, but mostly in the Boston area.
Okay, good. So I northeastern girl. It tends to me that we get along. That usually means we get along a little. I'm from the mid-Atlantic area.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and I always noticed that in grad school when the people that I got along with right away, like we just
Hmm.
clicked, right? Guess where they were from? Massachusetts, Connecticut, like PA, like
Yeah.
where I was from, essentially where I grew up too, and we kind of clicked right away, all of that. And now that I live kind of closer to the West Coast, like I am
Hmm.
not a West Coast. I love the weather out
Yeah.
here
Hmm.
but which I know is what everybody says, but the culture. I am more uptight. I'm a
Well,
let's move,
you're in
let's
Vegas.
yeah, flip-flops to work is just not in my blood. Like it is just something I just cringe at it. So the SoCal stuff, the way people drive out here and stuff, they're just la 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 leisurely going around. Although Texas drivers are pretty bad too. I lived in Louisiana for a little while, so I'm not as familiar with Texas, but I lived in Lake Charles, Louisiana, so if I wanted to go to a big city, I had to drive
Mhm.
2 hours west to Houston or 3 hours east to New Orleans. If I wanted to
Yeah.
get, let's say, Chipotle or something, I had to drive to Baton Rouge
Oh
or
my
Lafayette
God.
because it didn't
That
exist in
sucks.
Lake Charles. Yeah. It was a strange experience, formative experience though. Yeah, and my wife came with me. We weren't married yet, but she
Uh-huh.
came with me for that. So just interesting when, regional stuff always comes up, the regions being in America. So why did you move to Texas for? How did you end up in Texas?
Well, I moved to Texas because of the MFA program.
Right.
I
Yeah, that's
got
why I moved
in.
down there too. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you moved to Louisiana for your
Yeah,
MFA?
yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, and mine was my MFA program started in 2020, which is obviously the best possible year to.
Right. Yeah.
No, but it was I moved down here in 2020, and obviously in some ways like Texas was more open than the Northeast. But unfortunately, my program had moved online. So
Right.
didn't really end up, sort of feeling even necessarily like really in an MFA program even until, like sort of halfway through my second year. But yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting too. You're not the first one
Hmm.
that said that. I think a mutual of ours, Cassandra at Truth Enjoyer, who's been on the show, go listen to that episode, listeners. She said something similar where she started in 2020 and it
Hmm.
was the pandemic kind of really derailed the
Hmm.
workshops, particularly. Like it was like
Hmm.
almost feeling cheated. I mean, yeah,
Hmm.
that'll come up. The next question we always like to ask, and you said this was later in life, we like to ask, when did reading and writing come into your life? You said later?
Hmm. I yeah, it's I say I didn't really start reading or writing seriously until like I would say at a literary caliber, right?
Right.
But I mean, obviously, I've always read and to some extent written. Like I've always kept journals and blogs, like and like I used to I lived in Paris for a while and I had a sort of Paris lifestyle expat blog, like a very sort of like girly, whatever.
Emily in Paris,
Yeah, a little
Stephanie
bit.
in Paris. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. It was a little bit of that, though I would say it was like slightly cheekier than that. Like I would commentate on like like cultural differences and sort of yeah, like it was like a little bit humorous, a little bit lifestyle-y. Um, but yeah, I didn't really I didn't really start like at least in terms of poetry, I didn't really start reading or writing until my late 20s.
Yeah, that's always interesting too. We ask that
Hmm.
because, there's ebbs and flows. Some people are like, oh, right away. And then, high school years, it falls
Hmm.
away. I mean, that was me. And then you kind of get back into it as an adult. It is
Hmm.
interesting how that plays out. So the next question off of that is, who are your go-to inspirations or your idols in the
Hmm.
literary world? And this can be anything, anything goes. Who would you say are like your big inspirations or your favorite writers, in the literary side of things, or any pop
Yeah.
side of things, anything, genre, whatever.
Um, well, okay, so like right now on the internet, in terms of like people that I'm reading right now, I'm a huge fan of Sam Chris, the I don't know, we say the essayist, the blogger.
I was gonna say journalist, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
essayist
well,
is a good,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I consider him primarily an essayist, and
And they're cultural essays usually, yeah.
oftentimes fiction writer as well. I really enjoy his fiction. In terms of like writers that influence my poetry,
Yeah, anything, yeah.
yeah, I'm very heavily influenced by the strain of confessionalism in the 60s and 70s, um, female confessionalist writers, um, and I guess like uh, one of my poetry professors, Joanna Klink, also influenced me a lot, and um, sort of just like heavily naturalistic imagery, and yeah, I don't know. That's
Any
what's coming to mind right now.
any of the confessional greats. So I mean we cover them on this shit. Saxton, Plath, these kind
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
um I mean, these are some of the biggest icons in American poetry too, honestly. But yeah, the confessional, I like that you said that because that is, I think, most people's introduction is that kind of post 1960s
Hmm.
confessional movement that, I mean, I have a take on that, that it has never gone away. Like we're living
Hmm.
through this kind of everything is confessional. Journalism pieces are
Well,
confessional now in this kind of
well,
sense.
I have takes on that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
Please.
well, so first of all, that I really I love Plath and Sexton, of course, but there's also a generation after them.
Right.
I loved Kim Adonisio and Dorian Locks, and like just the writers that came after, a generation after.
Right.
I will say that I do think that was like the last, you know, like solidly enjoyable generation of confessionalists,
Yeah.
because once we move into current era confessionalism, I kind of see a break with the lineage. In fact, I don't like
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't necessarily consider like current day confessionalism to be of like I don't know, it kind of feels to me like a different thing. And one of
Yeah.
my mutuals and internet friends, Audrey Lee, just published a Substack essay that went viral like a week and a half ago, I think,
Yes. Yes.
about confessional essay writing, and specifically female confessional essay writing.
Right.
And I thought she was, quite correct, and all the sort of criticisms, none of these
Right.
criticisms are new. Um, like I grew up in an era of confessional writing that was very much like, let me write about the time that I was molested by my gym teacher, or
Right.
and
Yes.
get paid like $50 by Exo Jane. And the latest iteration of that, right, is the cut. Um, and that to me, it's not necessarily art, that's entertainment.
Right.
That kind of writing is closer to what you would find on like a Reddit thread, like r/relationships, or
Yeah.
stuff like that, than the writing of like um Plath or Sexton or Adonisio, or it's that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think
I think
it's
we shouldn't just call it all confessionalism and be like, well, it sucks.
yeah, I think you're right. I think there's is a distinction between the generations and also I think the most current. How much do you think the internet is kind of involved in that? I didn't plan on
Hmm.
it. I mean, I plan to ask you about social media, but I think,
Yeah.
just with this more broadly, how much
Hmm.
do you think that the internet is, because that's what I think is really, it's almost this eh, the confessional movement now
Hmm.
is this kind of diary stuff, but it's kind of geared towards the internet culture, the phrases,
Hmm.
the way of speaking, all of that kind of starts to bleed into all of these kind of confessional essays and things like that. I don't know. I mean, how much do you think that the internet has is the reason for that kind of distinct break that you're seeing or you feel in the kind of newer
Yeah.
confessional stuff? I don't know. What, yeah.
So I think there's two things. I think there's multiple sources of pollution. Um,
It's a good word for it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, now that makes me sound like some sort of a weird purist. Like,
We don't mind snobbery. We do not mind snobbery. Yeah.
um, I think there's multiple sources of pollution. Like one is definitely the internet, and that is not something that is unique to confessionalism. It has degraded every possible like permutation and branch of the arts, of thinking, of like of life, really, of relating. Like it's not something that has had like, I think, a uniquely detrimental, effect on the confessional lineage or whatever. I would say it's been way worse for other things like politics, or like,
Yeah.
so that's one thing. The other thing that I think has come into poetry is the influence of prose writing
Yes.
and autofictive prose,
Yeah.
which is the major thing here. I think is like, you saw sort of like the rise of prose poetry, and with these figures, like for instance like Tao Lin, who write both autofiction and poetry. Like these styles have over time merged, and what that means is that there's less of a lyrical quality often, I find, to contemporary sort of autofictive or confessionalist poetry. And that's the thing that, I don't know, I'm such a stan of the lyric. I I think it's really too bad that that sort of like lyrical quality has been drained a bit.
It's very interesting because I agree with you. And I think there's like, we almost don't know what to do with lyrical poetry now. Like people are like
Hmm.
confused by it. And we covered Jonathan Culler's theory of the lyric on this podcast in the first year of its existence here, way back when. Go listen to it, listeners. But like, he would make this argument, and he doesn't make much of an argument in that because it's hard to make an argument about lyric poetry. But he was trying to say, why do we enjoy it? What is the point of it? Like, kind of,
Hmm.
and he would say the point is to kind of enjoy it the
Hmm.
way you would enjoy a piece of music or something, right? It would be like, why is it good? And I think he's on the right track for something like that. But it just is interesting how the lyric is kind of being shoved aside for this kind of confessional narrative, yeah, version of
Hmm.
it. So that is interesting, and I liked your way that you put it with these two forms of pollution. And then really there's probably infinite forms of
Yes.
pollution with the
Yeah,
internet now, yeah, that come
100%.
through, but there's two distinct ones, yeah. It's true. I wanted to ask you, like, how did you even get into poetry? Because poetry is one of those things where like
Yeah.
you don't just like
Hmm.
fall into it. Like it's a slow build,
Yeah.
and then you kind of feel like, I think I like poetry. How did that happen? Was there any particular moment that you can remember, or like a writer or anything like that that you're like, I think I
Hmm.
want to try to write this? I mean,
Yeah.
how did you start poetry and not prose? And
Sure.
yeah,
And again, like I guess I'd already written prose in terms of just like blogging, but these sort of bloggy essays, which I've now like returning to that forum since I recently started a Substack. I sort of explain my journey in my latest Substack post, how to be a poet. And I sort of came to poetry through the spoken word world.
Okay.
So I honestly I do not remember how I came across like just like spoken word videos on YouTube.
Right.
I it's the fucking YouTube algorithm. Like
Yeah.
who knows why it got served to me, but I started watching spoken word videos in my late 20s. Um and I was very much like all about that for like a year or so. And then I started going to in-person, poetry events just around Boston, whether spoken word or open mic nights or sort of more traditional like poetry readings at bookstores and things like that. And I kind of like slowly graduated into interest in page poetry. So at first, what I would do was like buy the books of my favorite spoken word artists and read those on the page. And then gradually I read stuff that was more like, still like like really accessible, like Mary Oliver, Billy Collins. I got into Ocean Vuong. He was one of like the first poets that I read. And so I actually started out like as a contemporary poetry enjoyer and worked my way backwards in time. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of why like when people make fun of like, Instagram poets or whatever, like yeah, it is funny. But those people they probably reach, hundreds of thousands of people. And of those hundreds of thousands of people, like, even if like 1% goes on and reads further, then, you know, you can get into serious poetry through that pipeline. It happened to me, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting too.
Hmm,
That's the YouTube algorithm getting just making your life take on a whole new
hmm.
trajectory here. Yeah. We're all at mercy of that.
Yeah.
It's always, yeah. And you said it was contemporary stuff like, yeah, Billy Collins, and that is the stuff that gets shared. So when was this would have been like mid to 2010s?
Not even. This is probably like, I want to say it was like maybe 2018 or something.
Oh,
It
so
was
very
real. It
recently.
wasn't that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've only been at this for like 7, 8 years, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. And that is that what inspired you to want to do it like seriously in grad school and
Well,
stuff? Like,
well, a couple of things happened. I went through a divorce at the time, too, which I think, changed my brain chemistry in such a way that I suddenly found myself enjoying reading poetry, which I previously hadn't really done that,
well, that's interesting.
and
How
of
old
course,
were you when that was going on?
hold on, that was 7 years ago. So it's like, yeah, it was like 28. Yeah. Um, and like, and obviously like going through a divorce, like I'm reading like love poems or like these very maudlin, yeah, like syrupy, sentimental,
Right.
maudlin, accessible, popular, like, sort of like the worst sort of like barrage of, you know, um, adjectives that you can throw at that type of poetry. But that's what spoke to me like at that point in my life, and I did sort of move on from that, right? So, um, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting how that gets sparked here. Switching gears a little bit here,
Yeah.
we'd like to do the kind of childhood and how you came to be, sitting here before us with your book and all that.
Sure.
But we took a move towards social media because this is how I discovered you. This is how
Okay.
we became mutuals. This is how
Mhm,
I
mhm,
think most people discover writers they like now is through the kind of
mhm,
online stuff. And this is one that where you've called yourself a former edgelord.
mhm, mhm.
And I wanted to ask you, what do you mean by that? And maybe we should start with saying what an edgelord is. I always think of like my boomer parents that listen to this. They have no idea what that is. Like, yeah, what is an edgelord and why do you call yourself a former edgelord?
Yeah. Wait, so what? Okay, so in order for me to explain this in the best possible way, like, what is the demographic that listens to your podcast? Like,
Surprisingly, we have it's kind of all over the place.
hmm hmm
So because I think it's because I do all the genres. So I do
hmm
nonfiction, fiction, and poetry. I think that's maybe why it gets a little spread out. Of
hmm
course, I have a base in kind of the Twitter circles that we find ourselves
hmm
in. Of course, there's a base there, but I've discovered through people reaching out to me and all of that and stuff that, yeah, pretty much anybody between the ages of 25 and 55 is like listening to this.
hmm hmm
Um, and they usually have some type of interest in one of those genres that I cover. So I don't really know.
Okay.
I like to think that it is a wide net, but who knows with that kind of stuff. But
Yeah. Okay, so I think what you're referring to is like I recently or earlier this summer I found out that one of my MFA um, classmates who works for McNally Jackson, the bookstore chain in New York, got my book stocked there and sort of like displayed there. And I posted this meme that was like, I'm never gonna trash talk MFA programs again. I'm a retired edgelord. But yeah, like I think an edgelord, especially like in the literary world context, is like just I don't know, someone who's like a little bit cantankerous and throwing up objections to things that other people widely enjoy, but I think like what I mean, it can mean anything from disparaging MFA programs to, for instance, for a while it was like very edgy to criticize like Ocean Vuong, for
right,
example, and now everybody is on. And
it's mainstream.
like I've had a reflexive. Now I'm going the other way. I'm like I digging out my "On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous" tote bag or whatever. But yeah, just like someone who's like a little bit sort of contrarian in terms of like what is yeah, like what is being enjoyed. And obviously you mentioned this, like I don't think, I actually really don't think that this is like controversial, but there like the Hobart drama, which I actually was looking up. I was like, how long ago did that happen? It just like seems like ancient history. And it was like I literally looked it up before this podcast because I knew you were going to ask about it, but it was like late 2022.
Right.
But it feels so long ago. And like
Yeah.
no one cares at all, about that stuff anymore. But yeah, and it just kind of goes to show you like how much stuff can change in like a couple of years even.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good advice to writers listening too, is just like when
Yeah.
there is just, let it roll off the back in 24 to 48 hours, it'll be over. Like it'll be everybody forgets. So
hmm
doesn't really matter. Although, I mean, that was a moment. I mean, I didn't even want to refer to it specifically, but we can. I mean, this kind of that was a moment where I think there was a cultural shift. And when
hmm
you saw something like that, because again, even Hobart, like it's not like this is like the
Oh, it's
cream of
not.
the crop, but it's a well-known,
Mhm.
online literary magazine, been around for many years, and people respect it and like it as it deserves. And then, for listeners that don't know, it was this controversy where there was an interview with another writer. Was it Alex Perez?
Yeah.
Who was criticizing the literary world, the publishing industry, and all of that. And Hobart published that interview, and everybody just freaked out about it. It was one person giving their opinion in an interview, but apparently that was enough to make the entire half the editorial board resign.
No, it was
All
the
of that.
entire editorial
The
board.
entire.
It was the
Okay,
entire
wow.
board.
Were you
Elizabeth
there at the
Ellen.
time?
I wasn't there. No, I came on after that, actually. Elizabeth Ellen reached out and asked if I wanted to be one of the editors. And, it was like, first of all, I'm like kind of astounded that people read, like, it was like a 10,000 word intro.
Yeah.
It was so long. I'm like, I can't even read through it to get offended because
Yeah.
I honestly was like, this needed some editing. Like, put that shit up front so I know what to be offended at. Like I just um but yeah, I don't know, and it was just such like I don't know. It's like it's such a nothing burger. I mean, it's this, one cantankerous guy. Like, I don't know, just like who cares? But obviously a lot of people did care. The entire board resigned, and then she got an entirely new editorial board, including myself. And it's just been so chill. Like I
Right.
don't even, it's and the funny thing, right, is that actually I think the editorial board is like the most diverse it's ever been. I think it's like
Right.
way more diverse than it was
Right.
before the sort of quote unquote controversy. But anyway, yeah, it's a nothing burger. And like the when I came on board, sort of the new guidelines at that time was like, any of you guys, and there's like a gazillion of us, we're like a harem. The guidelines were like, any of you can publish anything that you see fit as an editor, and um, if you don't like what someone else has published on the site, and you can stop. You can just stop
Right.
associating with it. Like it's a very sort of decentralized, even thing. The actual Hobart Pulp Twitter account is run by Elizabeth Ellen, and I don't know where the hell she is. Like she's like that. I was because I actually I got she sent me a free T-shirt the other day for like a Hobart T-shirt, and I was just posting it, and I was trying to tag her, and I was like, holy shit, like the account's gone. Um, but that's the extent to which is decentralized. Like we don't know what other people are doing. We don't have meetings.
Right.
There's not a group chat. Someone asked me the other day if we had a group chat. I was like, no, I don't know. Um, so yeah, and I don't think there's literally been anything remotely dramatic since that flash in the pan, 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've talked about it with other writers and people kind of, in this milieu with, Brad and stuff like that on his podcast and stuff.
Mhm.
It does feel like there has been kind of a turn, like there has been kind of a shift away, and people are kind of taking a breath for a minute here. Whereas before it was kind of, this kind of like tightened up kind of thing concept, particularly in literary circles. But yeah, it does feel like there's maybe everybody's like, like letting out a breath for a minute, like kind of taking a minute and just like, although you never know, because I see some things on here, whenever there's a controversy within literary world, I'm always reminded that, I'm blocked by half the people on literary Twitter. And like I start looking like, oh, what went on? What's the controversy today? And then I'm just, oh, I'm blocked by this person, blocked by this person, like kind of like, oh, okay. So, I mean, there's still, it's dancing around there still, even though there are pockets that are like kind of opening up to kind of, like you said, it's almost interesting that it's like, it's more diverse than ever in these pockets that are just about the art. They don't care about the other stuff. And of course why wouldn't it be when you're not prioritizing some other bullshit? You're just prioritizing the art and taste and all of that. It just naturally starts to happen. We have this large, eclectic group of people that
Mhm.
are all interested in this. And, I mean, who knows what happened? But yeah, I didn't want to get sidetracked on that. But
Oh
yeah,
no.
the edge lord and stuff. But no, I
Well,
mean,
that's
it's
what
worth
you
talking
asked
about.
about. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's like the thing that sort of comes to my mind is like when that happened.
Yeah, edge lords going
Yeah.
at it. Yeah, yeah. And there's usually like an aggressive thing to it too. There's usually like an aggressive, and it's aggressive because
Mhm.
it's online posts. That's what we're talking about. Listen, it is online posts is what people are like, oh, that's an edgelord post. It's like, okay, well, they mean it's aggressive. They mean it's kind of contrarian, maybe even brash in terms of
Mhm. Mhm.
dismissive. And yeah, kind of aggressive and like can get kind of nasty, mean. I mean, this kind of thing, everything that happens in online kind of
Mhm.
discussion can devolve very quickly. I don't know. So there's that term that everybody throws around, and I was just curious, yeah, if you associated yourself with it or no longer associated yourself with it.
I don't.
Because for a
Yeah.
while there, you could do that. That was a path you
Yeah.
could take, and then
Mhm.
you'd gain like a following online, and then you could start putting your books through that kind of stuff. Like that, it was a path towards building a career in something. Okay, so I understand, that
Mhm.
angle of it. But yeah, who wants to be kind of who would want to be such an asshole kind of thing, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I actually think that that's kind of a misperception that like there's some sort of real career to be made out of, out of posting or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
especially just sort of like, I've had MFA classmates that went the agented route and then had a book out, through a major publisher. And the thing is, like, if you want a career, that is like the only way to do it,
Right.
really. Like there is no amount of posting or terminally online weirdos that you can sort of get to buy your book that would, that would be like a sliver of a fraction of what the large marketing machine of like the mainstream book publishers can do for you. You know what I mean? And so I don't think like if I guess maybe it's also because I'm in the poetry world where really there's no
Nobody
one
has careers. Yeah.
whatsoever. But I just don't think this is like a valid path towards gaining a readership, really. If what you really care about is making a career in writing and gaining a readership, you kind of have to still go, the old way. Um, yeah, this is just for fun. Like this stuff is just fun for me, or like, keeping my little internet diary or whatever. Like I have I harbor no sort of delusion that it is bringing me like, do me any favors in the literary world. Though I've made a lot of friends through the internet. It's helped me a lot personally. I don't know that it's helped me a lot career wise.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that is because, yeah, there are no careers in poetry any longer, really, no
Exactly.
matter what you do. But I don't know. I wonder if it was at one time and that's slowly
Mhm.
fading away because I am thinking of, yeah, the kind of great awakening, 2014 through 2020-ish, kind of 2022-ish,
Mhm.
getting a Ruth Lilly or getting any type of support that would
Mhm.
launch your career in the very, narrow world of poetry. You had to be in the certain online clique and you had to be friends with a certain online group of people. I'm thinking like
Oh,
Donna Smith. I'm thinking of what's his name? Calling a wolf a wolf. What's his name? I can't remember his name, but people know who I'm talking about. Yeah, I don't know. There was a
mhm.
scene, and this is where I wonder where we
Mhm.
kind of see like the kind of fading away of everything that happens online being the most important thing. But there was a scene for a while, and all of you had to be friends with these people in order to get anything from kind of a mainstream, at least on the poetry side of things. Um, I noticed that with the Ruth Lilly stuff, you could see it right around
Mhm.
2014. There was a huge shift in who was getting it and why. And then, of course, the people that got it previously have some say in it. So then they're just giving it to their friends, etc. So you kind of had to be in a scene. I wonder if that's still the case, like you're saying now. Probably not. I don't know. I've never really been in that scene.
So I
But
didn't get on Twitter until like 2020, and I was like, so I completely missed that era. Like I didn't even know that existed. But also that would have been the time that I wasn't reading or writing or interested in literature at all. So yeah, I didn't know that actually. I think I saw and maybe still to some extent still see like there you still see like tiny remnants of that sort of click. Um, but I think now they're mostly gone because the platform it's become, I mean, it's become unusable for everybody, but
yeah.
you know, there was like the blue sky refugees and whatnot. Like I just don't even think that a lot of people are on Twitter anymore.
Well, how social
Honestly.
media functions now, it's pay to play. So you have to pay to play
Mm,
now. It's not just like goofing off anymore and you get the algorithm would boost you. You have to pay for the algorithmic boost now. And that's on all platforms. Two people talk about it with Twitter, but I mean, it's on Instagram, it's on
yeah.
everything now. If you
Uh-huh.
want, there's no more organic engagement. You have to pay to get reach. And maybe that was inevitable, but we had, like a 10, 15-year span where everything was free and you got like kind of boosted
Right.
naturally. Now it's not the case. It's just too valuable, right? The companies understood that this was valuable and people were
Yeah.
willing to pay for reach. So, that's where it is now. And whatever, whatever. That's just how, it's kind of inevitable somewhat.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting how that plays out. I wanted to ask you about like,
Hmm.
um, how much of an artist's career now is
Hmm.
owed to, well, one, let's start with, what role does social media play in a
Yeah.
writer's career now? We kind of
Yeah.
already talked about that, but yeah, what would you say, like is it, because I know this is something writers struggle with too. That people are
Hmm.
like, "Oh, I don't want to post. I don't want to expose myself
Yeah.
to
Uh-huh.
criticism and
Uh-huh.
stuff." And
Uh-huh.
you will
Uh-huh.
be doing that,
Yeah.
by
Uh-huh.
posting online. I don't know how much is that. How much would you
Hmm.
say you've used it? And you said
Hmm.
yeah, sometimes for personal connections, blah blah blah. I don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, your take on this again, your thoughts. This
Yeah.
however you want to answer that.
I think it's been kind of both a blessing and a curse. And the thing is like well, let me ask, did you read my book? Or no?
I've thumbed
Uh,
through some of it to prepare
okay,
for
cool,
this.
cool, cool.
Yes,
That's fine.
yes. I went to the free
Nice.
preview, but yeah, yeah.
Okay. So like my poetry is actually like very different, right? From like I don't know, it's very different, obviously, from like my posting, and it's also very different from, even my like sort of bloggy prose Substack writing. Like I really, sort of think it is the genre in which I express myself, you know, uh, most at a literary caliber, I guess. Like I, so I, and I kind of feel like if sort of people find out about me as a writer through my posts, they might think that my poetry is like that, and
Right,
that might in fact bias them against it, right?
right,
Because again, like the way that I treat posting is like I do treat it as like, sort of like not autofictive, but just straight up, like I autobiography, like just
right.
little micro diaristic you know snippets of text, and that is not at all the way that I write poetry. So it's almost like, my internet presence selects for a type of person that's interested in one type of writing, but what I'm offering in my poetry collection is a totally different type of writing. And so in that way, I think it might actually have been detrimental
Right.
to um, the way that I want my writing to be received.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think that's a very real trap that I think contemporary writers are
Hmm.
falling into too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you kind of get trapped in these, and this is where I think the political does come into it too, where you kind of get trapped in like feeling like you have to say something about it or whatever because you have all these people pressuring you or whatever. I don't know. And then it kind of, even if that's not what your writing's about, I'm never writing even that like that. Like I never write political stuff. I was
Hmm.
never very interested in it, but
Hmm.
somehow, yeah, you end up posting about it. Now everybody's pegging you in this way. It's just interesting how that plays out. So I was just curious, yeah, how social media plays a role in that now. There was a time where followers did equate to getting noticed. Again, that was the old algorithm
Hmm.
before you had to pay to play now. So
Hmm.
that's out the window. So I mean, yeah, like it is. I mean, just in the last 5 years, how this has all changed, even the way it used to be to the way it is now. So I was
Hmm.
just curious, yeah, how people do that because that's the one people
Yeah.
struggle with. Where even when you get a deal, you go to an agent. Yeah, I've had friends through MFAs do this, and they're always interested in what is your social media following? Do you have 10,000 followers? Okay, we can work with that. Like do you have 20,000? Great. Like because they want you to be a kind of a household name already, which is impossible with first books, right? Like it's impossible to do that with a first book, but
Well,
like there is this like leaning, unless you're going the indie route, of course, but like if you're going the
mhm.
mainstream route, they want, and even the indie route, they're like, how are you going to market this book for us?
So
It's kind of
yeah, I don't know if that's totally true because I think like I've seen classmates sort of get agented and then a book deal with like being like mostly offline.
Mhm.
And I honestly think that if you can do that, like that's the best thing you can possibly do. And then you're not embroiled in all this other crap. So I don't know. Like yeah, I'm sure to some extent they probably are, like it's probably a boost if you also have a social media following, but it is still possible to go the traditional route without being very online. And I think if that's a possibility for you, you should do
yeah.
that.
And this gets to the performance, and I think you're right. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's open. Yeah. Because I've had friends do the same thing. Yeah. But there's this. I wanted to ask about performance, and there's kind of the performance to being online, and but I think we can broaden this before even outside of being, just the online
Mhm.
performance. I was thinking, I wanted to ask you, how much is in performance? How much does that matter to an artist's career, in the 21st century, or
Mhm.
what would you say? Yeah,
You mean on social media or
social
offline? Or
media,
yeah.
offline, any
Okay,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, the
I
broaden it out because I didn't want
yeah,
to just we've been talking online, so
sure,
yeah, we can do
sure.
online, but I think it's broader than that too. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot more IRL stuff
yeah,
in the last, I would say 2 years, and especially this past year. I actually have started, I like performing,
right.
and this sort of like, I guess goes back to my initial interest in the spoken word scene, which obviously has a lot of problems, but I do like relish that performative element in a poetry reading because I honestly think that is the way that it's supposed to be done. Like,
Yeah.
we have a little contingent in Austin of poets where, we encourage each other to memorize. We memorize our poems, and we go and perform them. I have at my book launch, what I did was I brought um, three tarot cards. I brought the love card, the death card, and then the magician, which to me is the artist card. And I would have people draw a tarot card, and whatever they drew, I would perform a poem on that theme. And I did that too for a like an art fair. Like I circulated at a rooftop party, having people pull tarot cards and then reading them poems based on that, from memory, reciting poems based on those themes. Um, so yeah, and I don't know, like I love that. I've been involved in a couple indie films in Austin too, and yeah, I really relish the sort of IRL performative element. Online, it's hard. Online, it's hard because there's I think at a certain point, this happens to everyone. I think when you've been online for a while, you don't really know when you're performing anymore.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
You just have a certain style of posting, and that's just what you're used to. And is that a
Right.
performance, or is that's just the way that you do that? um but
Yeah.
yeah.
What's interesting, yeah, I think you're
Mhm,
right. It's kind of like an unconscious thing that you
mhm,
absorb. And I've
mhm.
been fascinated with this in terms of writing and just culturally as well. Depending on where you hang out online,
Yeah.
depending on what podcasts you listen to, you start to speak like that. You start to use the language, you start to use
Mhm,
the inside jokes. It's like its own little
mhm,
niche thing. And this is where we get to the kind of what makes it complicated to talk about online with this stuff. But like, and then you don't even realize, and I'm thinking the performative aspect too, like when you're getting dogpiled and everyone's, oh, I don't care. I don't care. I'm like, okay, well, you're performing that you don't care. You care. You're devastated on the inside. I mean, like
mhm.
it's the crying mask emoji or whatever, the Wojak, right? That kind of thing. That's real, right? Like that's real. But I feel like you're right. Like the performances, I encourage this as well to everybody listening and all that. When you perform it, like it just you give something to the audience. Like Sherman
Mhm.
Alexie always said this. He's like, they can read your work in a monotone voice out loud to themselves at home. Okay. If they're coming to see you read it, they
Yeah.
want to see you read it. Give them something. Do an animated voice if you're not comfortable doing this. Do you have a theater background or anything? You said you acted in some films, stuff. Do you
No,
have a theater background, a
no,
performance
not at
background, or
all. Not at
yeah?
all. And it's really something that I've gotten into like just over the last couple of years. One thing that I love the arts
Yeah.
community in Austin, and there's a lot of overlap and collaborations between, performance artists, writers, musicians, film people, painters. And so yeah, there have been a lot of opportunities for collaboration. We also have like a crazy, sort of budding zine culture
Huh.
here. So
That's
yeah.
interesting. Is
Hmm.
is it is it how widespread would you say that is for interesting with like printed real zines, like hand
Yeah,
in
like
your hands?
just in the last 6 months, there's been a physical zine store that opened
Really?
up like not far from where I live. And I was, I was really surprised by that actually, because I don't know how the hell they're making any money, or if they
Right,
are.
they
I mean, who
probably
knows
aren't.
how long
Yeah.
it'll last. But um, we have a bookstore, Alien and Majesty, that has that has a big zine and like literature and translation section, and um, sort of more obscure stuff, not like less, just sort of less mainstream literature. And yeah, I don't know. I do think that the sort of DIY ethic is still very much in the city. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean,
Mhm,
I always think of this through my first year in grad school. I was the
mhm,
first year, and my program was 3 years. So we called them second year and third year, right? That's what
mhm,
everybody would say in MFAs. And I remember my first year, I was there maybe, it was my first 4 or 5 weeks, living in a
mhm,
strange city, living in a new program. I was the new guy in the poetry cohort thing. And one of the third year guys, a fiction guy, he texted me and he said, "Hey, we need a reader for this reading
mhm,
thing.
mhm.
Would you be willing?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. That's fine with me because I'm somebody who has kind of a theater performing background.
Mhm.
I was in bands and stuff. I'm not shy about being on stage essentially."
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he said, "Okay, you can go first." And I just said, "Okay." I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're gonna regret that. Like, you're gonna regret putting me on first." So I got up there and I did my thing. Like you said, memorized poems. I performed them kind of stuff. And then I remember the girl that went on. If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, jerk shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard. After me, she like got up there and apologized for not being as animated as me before she even began reading. And I was just like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
something that you can give elevation to your work in this way. And it's so important. And especially because, the amount of people that are to come to a live event, it's very small. Um, and they're just, that can help you bring in a few readers. That can help you bring in people that are now
Mhm.
interested in the book. They're now interested in buying a copy. They're now interested in following you. All this, it just little things like that make a huge difference. I don't know. I mean, just I wanted to ask you about it because you called yourself a performer in your bio and stuff. And I was like, huh, that's interesting stuff. Because I think it's
Yeah,
true.
I
It's important. Yeah.
recently added that. Yeah, and yeah, and I'm always looking for, more opportunities to do that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Quick question here. Would you call yourself an e-girl?
No, I'm, I'm like almost 40. Like you can't be any girl.
Some people are
For
pushing that line. Some people are
I
pushing that line. Yeah.
sure, sure. I no. I wouldn't anymore. I would say that like maybe like when I first got online, like well here's the thing, right? Like this goes to what you were saying. Like there's this entire vocabulary
Yeah.
um of internet culture that it cycles through fast. So like there's no way that like that word now has like derogatory
Right.
connotations,
Yeah.
but initially it didn't necessarily. It was kind of fun and like
Right.
flirty and um
Cool. It was cool. Like it
mhm,
was, yeah, hot girls
mhm.
posting hot pictures. I mean, it was cool. Like it was a magazine spread, but on your feed, like
Sure,
it
but
was,
these terms like cycle through so fast, and they acquire like negative connotations so
hmm
quickly as well. I mean, the successor, right, to the term e-girl is I think a year and a half ago or something like that, maybe 2 years ago, the literary it girl. Do you remember that?
mm-hmm.
and that for a while was like a big thing. It
Yeah.
was like, well, like there's nothing, there's nothing you'd
People
want
still have it in their
more
bios. Yeah. People
than
still have it in their
yeah, to
bios.
to
Yeah.
be a literary girl. And now it again is like derogatory. Like
Yep.
God forbid someone think of you. It's like, so
Anybody who's
this stuff,
successful at doing
yeah,
anything is now
this stuff
automatic
cycles.
derogatory. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So no, I don't identify as really anything. I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And at this point, to be honest, I'm not even like, like my latest incarnation is like an advice columnist, so
Right.
which isn't even like a literary type of writing necessarily. So I don't know. I'm always looking to sort of change up my artistic practice. Like
Yeah.
maybe I want to do like more performance or acting, or I don't know. Like it's um I now that I have this sort of poetry book out, I've actually become like less interested in poetry, and more into like on to the next, like what
Yeah.
else
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
I do?
Well, that's coming up too. We like to ask everybody, all the
Yeah.
writers that come on, what's their current project and stuff, and if it's different. Yeah. But I was just asking that because I think it went off of the performance, like you said. I think it's something
Yeah.
that is a performance that maybe even young girls that are into art, or maybe even not into art, just want
Mhm,
attention
mhm.
online or whatever. You can fall into that performance of kind of the e-girl type thing
Yeah.
and whatever. And then it's so strange how this happens. That's why I'm constantly curious about it and
Yeah.
just wanted to ask. Yeah. But all right, let's move on from that because that was enough internet talk, although it'll come up. Yeah. But you wrote an essay recently called Only Bad Poems Go Viral.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
why is it always
Hmm.
bad poems that go viral? Is it a sign of how hated poetry is?
Hmm.
Why do you think it's only bad poems that go viral?
Yeah. So I kind of want to like specify, like, in that essay, it's like only quotation mark bad quotation mark poems go viral, right? Like what, and the mechanism that I specify um in my essay is that basically a poem will go viral first for being good. Like a lot of people will enjoy a poem, usually because it has elements that have great mass appeal. For instance, it might be kind of prosy. It might address elements of quotidian life or pop culture. It might have a political valence that expresses a popular political sentiment, whatever. And so at first it'll go viral because people love it. And then that triggers a backlash, where it then goes viral for, among critics, like people who are, trying to bring it down.
Edgelords.
Not, I mean, I think
I'm kidding. I'm
some,
kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think some people are edgelording. But other people, I mean, obviously a lot of the criticisms are also valid. Like they're like, this
Right.
is trite, or, this
I mean, my
is
big
really
thing's lineation.
self-indulgent.
Yeah, lineation
Yeah,
is
yeah.
non-existent in a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, though here's the thing that someone sort of brought up to me in when I was discussing that essay. Um, a lot of people, like, there are a lot of accounts who, whenever you see them tweet about poetry, it's only to dunk on
Hmm.
bad poems. Like you never see them post a good poem. You never see them like, and when I see someone doing that, that's like a flag, right? Like this person doesn't actually care about poetry.
Right.
Like they care about like dunking on someone on the internet.
And there's
Um,
that larger cultural thing. They're participating in the
yeah.
cultural
Hmm.
critique through using this poem. Yeah.
Hmm. 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 And then invariably it's those accounts that are like, oh, why are poems so bad these days? But the only poems they encounter are these quote unquote bad ones, which, a lot of times they actually really are bad.
Hmm.
But they're not reading poetry on a regular basis. Like how
Right.
would they know?
They're not buying the books. Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Because I mean, yeah, that's interesting how that plays out too with these bad poems. I
Hmm.
was thinking, yeah, because you think of like the good poems that go viral. I was thinking of like the one that was like That went viral that was actually good was like the Maggie Smith, right? Good
The
Bones.
good, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
That was the
Hmm.
first kind of like legitimate kind of not Instagram poetry that went
Hmm.
very viral and made her career for her in a way. So I mean that's why I asked about, social media as a tool and blah 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 blah.
Um, there's also that poem, Two-Headed Calf. That one always goes viral. It goes viral like every 4 months or something.
Dang, I'm not even familiar with it. I must be blocked by too many people so it doesn't pop into my feed or whatever. What even is that one?
It's about a two-headed calf.
Hmm.
It's like maybe like a
No.
cow was exposed to radiation or something.
I think there was one born that was like a science thing historically, right? Like a two-headed calf.
I think there's been multiple. Yeah, it's just a genetic mutation, but
Right.
it was like a lovely poem. I mean, but yeah, so good poems do sometimes go viral, and those ones are, I would say, they hold their own technically, so they don't get dunked on as much. They don't occasion that backlash as much. But then, what the era of poetry Twitter that you're talking about that I was absent for, I think that this was more of a phenomenon back then where poems would go viral for being just good,
Yeah.
and now we're like in the dark era where poems only go viral for being bad.
The Dark Ages, yes, the
Hmm.
Dark Ages of literature, the second Dark
Hmm.
Age here. Yeah, and I wanted to ask about kind of the
Hmm.
aesthetics of art too. I want to ask about your aesthetics, your
Yeah.
preferences,
Hmm.
but then also kind of the larger cultural, because I think this is where we see
Hmm.
some of this edgelord stuff is people just get really wrapped up in the aesthetic of things,
Hmm.
and then like the substance kind of goes by the wayside, and then it's kind
Yeah.
of just this, again, I go back to that, becomes a performative thing about aesthetics. So I wanted to ask
Hmm.
about your aesthetics, and then,
Yeah.
the broader kind of world with the art culture and how that's used
Yeah.
and stuff, hipster aesthetics, these kind of things that come in that are constantly people just say these things and they're very vague, but yeah, aesthetically, what would
Yeah.
you say your aesthetic is? What do you lean towards? And
Hmm.
then the broader cultural kind of poetry aesthetic.
So this is a really interesting question because I was just chatting with one of my good friends that I met through the internet, Paul Franz, who he lives in Canada and edits this journal called Literary Imagination, and he recently started a project called Romanticon, which is like like a sort of new romanticism.
Yeah.
And I've been giving him so much shit about this idea of like identifying as like a new romantic in like 2025, right? Like I've just been like constantly dunking on it. And then the other day I was like, you know what? I want to pitch him an essay that like that sort of like that that like that maybe is like in the vein of romanticism. Um so yeah, I think it is very difficult to, especially being as online as are, and being as like self-aware as we are, right? Like we can't like remove that like a gaze from ourselves. Like, um, I'm hesitant to throw my lot in with any sort of movement.
Right.
And my friends, like the people around me, are not remotely hesitant about that. There's Paul Franz with the New Romanticism. My very good friend Wallace Barker, who also lives in Austin, he started a magazine called Post Pop Lit, and his whole movement that he talks about is post pop, what comes after pop. Um, and I guess I'm just not really interested in these like larger sort of narrative frameworks, right? Like these aesthetic sort of scaffolds. And I don't identify as post pop or like a new romantic or really anything. So like, and I tweeted about this recently. I was like, why do writers have to why do writers have to like seek out these like labels? Just write the damn thing. Like, you know, people will figure it out. But that's just being cantankerous. I wouldn't say, yeah, like what is my aesthetic? I don't know.
Do you think you get lumped into any of those movements or aesthetics
I
just by association?
Someone told me that I got called alt lit on another podcast recently
Oh
or
yeah.
something, and I was like, that's interesting. What is, you know, obviously this is such a tired question, but is like that. It's just like, okay, yeah, I'm not published in like a big mainstream press, so the alternative press, right? It's like a small like press run by one person. That's
Right.
okay. That's that. I guess technically that is alt lit, but obviously there's like a social like um, valence as well, where it's like, well, you're friends with other people that are published by small presses, which it's just like ridiculous because it doesn't actually say anything at the end of the day. Um, um, and yeah, so I think I don't know. I don't really like we're doing this podcast. I'm wearing like a black hoodie. I'm like the most generic aesthetic like
I don't know. It sounds
literally
pretty alt lit. I don't know. No.
no, literally there's no aesthetic. Like I'm like anti aesthetic, I guess.
Yeah, it's
You know?
interesting with the alt lit stuff
Yeah.
too. I mean, that's one of those things where I was saying earlier, like I do get lumped into some of these things. Like I've had people reach out to me and be like, "Oh, I'm down with the alt lit thing," and I'm like, I'm not. Like I'm like, I don't know why you think
Yeah.
I am. Maybe you
Yeah.
don't listen to this show, but I criticize it all the time for being some of the most mediocre shit I've ever seen in my life.
But that's
Uh,
what alt-lit is just it's just like people that are not being published by large publishers. And so
yes.
of course there's like not just mediocre, but there's like absolute like dog shit. Like,
Yeah. I was being
so
generous. Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't have anything like yeah, like
Yeah.
and it's like, well, there's a reason some people are not being published by
Right.
giant presses. But there's also, of course, like many gems. And I think, to be the give it the most generous treatment possible. Like there are a lot of gems to be found in like small independent presses. So, I think that's what people hopefully mean.
Yeah. I mean, and that's interesting too, because I'm again, why does it always come back to the internet? The alt lit thing started to get lumped in with this political thing. It started to get lumped in with these other kind of vague, broad categories online that people use to, kind of talk about this shit.
Hmm.
And I think there were a few presses that embraced that, right? Like, come on, there was like this, fascist thing, right? You were accused of being fascist adjacent if you're involved in some of this stuff. I mean, that was a very real thing that people were saying,
Well,
and
but
it's
that,
faded off
yeah.
some, but like, yeah, I mean,
Well, to be
it's
fair, Andrew, there were like fascist
right,
presses.
right,
Like there was some of the. I mean, that's what I'm saying. When you say alt-lit, what you're just saying is like small press.
small
It's
press,
just an alternative to small press, and there were like I'm aware of at least one press like Terror House, if you know that like that was like
not
a
familiar,
very
no.
far right wing press as far as I can tell. And then there were sort of like more punk presses, edger press, like uh, being alt-lit doesn't actually right like it doesn't actually have like being a small press doesn't have a political valence in and of itself because it spans the entire spectrum. um so yeah, I don't know. I don't it's a word that means nothing really.
So I don't know if everybody else feels that way, but yeah, I definitely agree that it's kind of a dumb phrase, and I hate the phrase too,
Mhm.
but it seems like it's going to stick around. So that phrase has been in the vocab now. It's in the art world. It is,
Mhm.
like you said, it almost has a negative connotation now, like everything else that gets developed through kind of internet, lexicon. It's become negative in this
What
way.
is it
Maybe it
called?
always was.
There's like a term for that sort of phenomenon. It's like a slur treadmill or something. It's like as soon as a word adopts like or accumulates sort of negative karma, then another term has to come in to replace it. But then that one also over time, is going to have negative connotations as
Yes.
well. So yeah.
All right, let's
Um,
get no,
yeah.
please go on. Please go
Well,
on.
no, indie lit, right, for instance, right? So that kind of came in also as like an alternative sort of phrase to alt lit. But
Yeah.
my suggestion is to replace it with a small press.
Yeah, I've had writers on here that I would call like I said
Mm,
something like, "Oh, well, you self-published this," and then they like were like, "Oh no, it's indie published." And I was like, "Oh," like they're like people are kind of not, it's not like super aggressive or anything, but they were just like they people are kind of they don't like these labels and they want to put the right one on what they're doing and stuff. Some people are sticklers for that. So I was just curious about because of the connotation, I would assume people don't want to be called alt lit because you'll be lumped in with that. Like you said, some of those right wing presses, etc., and that became a taboo. But yeah, I want to ask about your book. So the book,
yes.
where does the title come from? How did you come up with that? What
Hmm.
inspired it? How does it encapsulate this whole collection of art? Like,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, the title was really tough actually. Like I didn't hit on that until the year before its publication, so I guess last year. It's a line from one of the poems that's about halfway through the book. And I remember I had this like conversation with the poet Roger Reeves, who's faculty at UT Austin. He's great. But we were talking about titles, and I previously had a chapbook out it was out for like a month, and then the press folded, so it essentially doesn't exist. But
very common
the
story. Yeah.
yeah, the title of that chapbook was Name and Noun. Um, and I had thought that my full length collection would be titled Moon and Mouth, actually, which is my handle, which is my internet handle. That had been the plan. And, obviously there's like a sort of rhyming, right, between name and noun and moon and mouth. Um, but as I continue thinking about it, it did seem like kind of generic. Like it really, it just and it was something that sort of got brought up in conversation with my friend, the poet Sebastian Paramo. He was like, I don't think the title is working for me. Um, it, like maybe look through your poems for something else. And yeah, that line kind of popped out at me, and I think it really does encapsulate a lot of the you know the motifs like in the book. um, I wrote like the little some of the back matter for the book, and the way that I describe what holds this collection together is that it's the large and small cataclysms that make up a life. um so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the in-betweens, right? That's what I
Yeah.
kind of call it,
Hmm.
is that just the in-between spaces, the
Hmm.
conflictions, the feelings that are confusing because they're two opposite ones. I mean, that's poetry, right? That's art and literature. How do you capture it? It's hard to do. It's hard to do, but yeah, that's the goal, right? Like these tiny little things. And you
Yeah.
said that's almost a romantic sense too, right? Like that's
Well, it is. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
I'm one of these. I wouldn't call myself a new romanticist, but I am
Hmm.
someone who thinks that we're much too cynical culturally, particularly around the art world right now. And I think
That's
there
so
needs to be
funny to hear
some
you say that.
romanticism. Yeah, there needs to be more romanticism about these tiny little things. The pen that you like, you need to romanticize the hell out of it. The notebook paper that you prefer, you need to romanticize the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Your little walks that you take to get inspiration, romanticize the hell out of it. Because what else do we have? Like, what else do we have now? But I don't know. Yeah, the new romanticism. Because I was never a huge fan of the romantics from, the kind of
Hmm. Hmm.
pre-Victorian and then the kind of during the Victorian era. I'm never a huge fan, but as I've aged, I've gotten a new appreciation for how romantic they were, right? Being so,
Hmm.
so out there romantic about it that you're romanticizing the leaves on a branch of a tree, okay, a little much for my taste, but like I understand it a little bit better than I did when I was 25 and be like, fuck that, like I understand why, you know, um, Keats wanted to romanticize that. I understand now why that was like so important. Yeah, I don't know.
I agree. But my main criticism of quote unquote new romanticism, and this is something that I've like obviously shared with the editors already. But I I'm like cautious of an impulse to romanticize the past, right? Like I think that I'm with you. I think romanticizing and building an aesthetic appreciation into our experience of the everyday is like, one of the only things that makes us human. But I think that like my fear with coming up with a movement like New Romanticism is that it's romantic, like it has like this reactionary flavor of being like the past was better, and this is the we're gonna try to return to some of the elements, and I'm really that's like not I'm really like not about that, and the other thing too is like, it's like there's a reason why there came movements after romanticism. Like what
Right.
was the why isn't the past anymore? Well, it's because there were like X, Y, and Z issues that then occasioned, these responses, and you can't make time stand still. um and so necessarily, right, like there's no returning to the past. So, just in terms of like a new romanticism, what does that mean, right?
Well, even
um
the romanticism back in the day, right? Like the initial movement, and there were several movements, listeners starting back in, the 19th century. Many listeners to this know this, but like that was a reaction to the Industrial
mhm,
Revolution, to kind of
mhm,
breaking
mhm.
up of villages. They
Right.
were becoming these big industrialized cities, and these kind of small, quaint villages, particularly in Europe, were just
Mhm,
ceasing to exist. We kind of went through that in the 70s here in the kind of
mhm,
American West, where, the factory shutting down these small towns, and we never really got a revival of that. Or maybe this nostalgia feeling is part of that. And like you mentioned, it is the internet, it seeps into everything here. So if you talk about romanticism, well, now you're lumped in with these things of people that it was better, it was better in 1868 or whatever, when people were dying
yeah.
of, diphtheria or whatever. It's just it's
Yeah,
kind of
right.
this weird thing that now you're lumped into it, and now all of a sudden you have to defend it, and you're like, wait a minute, like that's not what I'm talking about. But it's yeah, it's always, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there's just like a lot of cynicism, particularly about art, and it's making people not appreciate it. It's making people dismiss art more. Making people, I think that's even why people throw paint and stuff on art. They say it's a political thing for climate or whatever. No, it isn't. It's that you don't understand what this represents, why it's free for everybody to view in a museum, and you can get close enough to throw paint on it. Like you don't understand the romantic thing behind that, why we provide free museums in these kind of cultures, to everybody that wants to view this beautiful history of humanity.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe it's a lack of appreciation for the stuff that came before. Maybe there's like and I think you see that in literary study. Like I think there's particularly in
Hmm.
MFAs and PhD programs right now, if they're leaning towards more the creative side, although you don't have to necessarily be doing that,
Hmm.
there's a tendency to focus on post 1960s literature. So you can get a
Hmm.
PhD in literature now without having read anything published before
Hmm.
1960. And that's okay. You can be an expert in late 20th century poetry or something.
Hmm.
That's fine. But if everybody's doing that, like then we are losing the kind of what came before to get us to this,
Yeah.
21st century new romanticism, edge lords, internet poems, internet, all the stuff that we're living through now, everything that led up to it. I don't know. I'm a romantic at heart, right? Like a
Yeah.
hopeless kind of
No,
emo
of
kid. I
course.
loved emo
See.
music and that kind of shit. Yeah, was just, yeah. So I like that. I like to romanticize the things I'm reading, the characters, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Do you think that what do you think it says that, like the most popular genre by far now of not literature, but let's just say books, is like these serial romances, romanticy, right?
Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting. I mean, it's something that I'm constantly thinking about on the and the genres that still sell too, in
mhm,
like the book liter. If we're just going to keep it to literature, because that
mhm,
make it easier to talk about,
yeah.
sci-fi, romance, fantasy. Those
Mhm,
are like the three genres that they still don't sell like they used to, but they still sell compared to literary or, adventure fiction or any of these other kind of genres that you could write in. Um, that's just not, they just don't sell. I don't know. So there's this kind of level of everybody. they want the romance, they like it. I think it's almost a need too. Like when you see these kind of great love stories, the great, Jane Austen. I'm a huge
Hmm.
Edith Wharton fan, Edith Wharton
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm.
These great love stories, they do inform us in a way. They inform
Hmm.
the feelings, they inform the expectations, they inform, I think, a romantic sense of even, I don't want, for lack of a better term, I'll say whimsy, but this kind of romantic sense of,
That's a beautiful word to describe it. I think
yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's just
But
something that we
mhm.
need out of it. Yeah,
Well,
please go
the
on.
whimsy, and I think the element that comes in for me is like that whimsy is non-algorithmical, right?
Yes,
It's the
that's a good way.
opposite of
Yeah.
an algorithm. Whimsy implies that something can spontaneously happen, that you
Yes.
might fall in love, you might have a transcendental moment of contemplation, of a leaf on a branch, and it was not algorithmically served to you. And I think that is what people are longing for today. And in that sense, yes, I'm a new romantic in that sense. And like I'm an anti-algorithm romantic. I think people are desperately, desperately seeking that. So yeah, I guess in that sense, I can sort of get behind the movement and also even understand why, women especially are just, buying up these romanticy books at
Yeah, and
incredible
I know
rates.
there's like the stuff that goes viral is like the really
Mhm,
ridiculous sexual stuff, and I get that. But
mhm,
when you think of like the big ones, like even like Twilight, if we're gonna throw
mhm,
that in there, or something very important for millennials, was just like, you know, there is that kind of romantic sense, that love interest that always weaves its way in, and it's so human that we just can't avoid it. And I think the way you put it is a great way to put it here. It's a theme on this podcast. I mean, not that we're even coming up with an answer now. It's going to constantly comes up because I think, yeah, what is it that we long for in these stories? What is it that we long to see, that we get out of it? Why they're so important still, hundreds of
mhm.
years later. And I think
Well,
it is that, like you were saying. No, please.
it's the call to adventure, which we
Yeah.
almost never have
The
anymore.
meet cute. People were obsessed with the meet cute
Yes.
a few years ago
Mhm.
because it is
Mhm.
this spontaneous, oh, could I
Mm.
just meet the love of my life randomly at a bookstore or an
Mhm.
owl searching through the record bin or something? Like this
Yeah.
kind of,
Mhm.
maybe is that nostalgia? Maybe from a time when that's when you did meet your romantic
Right.
partner.
Right.
Like, I
Mhm.
mean, my wife and I have been together like 13 years now,
Mhm.
married about half that time. We met at a bar, like, and the old, like, dating apps
Totally.
didn't really exist. They were just
Yeah.
starting to come online. Uh, and there is like a romantic sense to that, right? We're both at this location for a reason. We get like kind of it was a trivia night. We were at trivia, blah blah
Mhm.
blah. So we had this connection immediately. Like it was this, yeah, I don't know. There's that thing, and it's a human longing that we
Mhm.
all want. And somebody like Austin can captures, or Wharton stuff is so tragic too. I mean, it just
Mhm.
bring you to tears reading it.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
that I love it. I love it. So
Mhm.
that's, yeah, interesting stuff. Another question I ask all poets that come on here, Stefan. You can answer this
Yeah.
however you want. Why does
Mhm.
poetry suck right now?
Oh boy. Um.
If
Yeah.
if you think it sucks at all, I mean, that's how I like to frame it. Why does poetry suck right now?
I would say, this kind of goes back. We sort of discussed this already with the only bad poems go viral essay. I think a lot of the poetry that people encounter, which is through, viral means, they've been served algorithmically, a poem that's been, more or less designed to go viral. And it has these gestures that come across as extremely grating, whether that's the choppy meter or lineation, or the sort of like the content is didactic a lot of the times. Like that, I think when I encounter poems that suck, it's like the prevalence of these types of gestures. I will say there's a lot of poetry that does not suck, and you will never encounter it on your computer screen. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like you don't even fucking know. Like the people that are talking about how bad poems suck, like they have no idea because they're not actually reading. That they're not going to a bookstore and actually like and not like Barnes and Noble. Jesus Christ! I like the last time I went into a Barnes and Noble, and there was like and try to find their poetry section. It's just an abattoir. But
It's all Bukowski and Billy Collins. Yeah.
not even. Oh my God, that would be
Really?
like that would be great if it but it was no, 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 just it
Instagram
was
poets now, I
yes,
imagine. Yeah.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
uh-huh. Um No, but like I'm such a fan of yeah, like some of the faculty members I study with, I think are fantastic poets. Joanna Klink, Roger Reeves, for instance. Um, uh, um, um, uh, a lot of the deep vellum poets are quite good as well. I like this other Austin-based poet. I don't know, I don't remember how to say her name. I think it's Taisia Kitaskaya. She wrote The Nightgown and other poems. But yeah, I don't know. I just read some poets who are not online. Like they're good. They're really good. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say that all poetry sucks now, but all poetry that you encounter on your screen that's been algorithmically served to you probably is not good.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. My one caveat is it's about what's the institutions are doing. Are the institutions seem to be embracing. Of course, there's two worlds now, right? There's the old world and then there's the new world in terms of the online and now offline. So, a lot of these institutions that have grandfathered stuff in, like you said, the great staff at a lot of these programs, great faculty that have been there many years, they came in through the old world, right? They didn't come through the internet algorithmic
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
And now the institutions, and I'm thinking of things specifically like Poetry Foundation, has
Hmm.
really embraced Instagram poetry and rewards it and puts it up on their page and puts it in their magazine and pays poets for it. And that's where I say the kind of like why contemporary poetry sucks is because we're prioritizing the bad. Like you said, maybe it's algorithmically produced and it probably is.
Hmm.
We're prioritizing and rewarding the bad poems instead of the good stuff. I
Hmm.
have people reach out to me, young writers and stuff. They're like, "Oh, I'm looking for poets," and I'll give them a list of contemporary poets that I
Hmm.
think are fantastic. Doing great work, and they're employed most of the time at prestigious schools or prestigious
Hmm.
MFA programs and all that.
Hmm.
Um, and they've never heard of them. Yeah, they've never heard of them. They've never even sought out any of that stuff. And you can find them in the pages of something like Poetry Magazine
Hmm.
occasionally, but
Hmm.
it's overwhelmingly, this kind of Instagram stuff that's rewarded, which I would call it, like a shallow kind of,
Hmm.
it's this, song lyrics dressed up, smashed into a page, and then everyone's it's poetry, and I'm like, yeah, technically, but it sucks. But yeah, that's just I was always curious. I like to get poets' take on it, and I've it's always more nuanced than people think. So I'm curious.
Yeah.
Uh, the last couple questions are all writing questions about craft and et cetera, et cetera. What is your writing routine like? How do you like to do it?
Well, I've actually, many such cases, but ever since I've finished my book, I've not been writing a lot. I think I've taken, sort of a step back, at least when it comes to poetry. I've been doing other stuff. I've been, I've been hosting a shit ton of readings
Yeah.
around town. I've been doing like little essay writing and stuff like that. But I'm just having fun. I'm just having fun, biding my time. I do think that I'm not someone that can sort of force it, and I know that like I'm not a very disciplined writer, to be honest. So right now I don't really have a routine. It's like sometimes I'll write on the weekends.
When you were composing the book, did you have like, an hour a day or
Mhm,
something in the evenings or the mornings where you kind of sat down and where, I don't know, does it work
mhm.
for you? It's always whatever works.
Yeah,
We're just curious. Different writers have different ways of going about it. Yeah.
I would say that like two-thirds of the poems in my book, I did through my MFA program. So a lot of them like came out of assignments that I had, so that it
Right.
was like a lot more regular. But before my MFA program, when I was learning poetry, I was like self-studying poetry after having, stumbled across like spoken word videos. I I just gave myself imitation poems to do. And I would do those, like just at night after work. I would like take out a poetry book and like find one that had, a very distinctive style and I would just try to write a poem in that style. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Like
mean,
like copy it out or like word because I've heard people do that too. Like they take Hemingway or their favorite writer and just try to hand copy it out. Be like, how did you do this? How does the words fit together in this specific order to make you feel this specific thing? Yeah.
yeah. I haven't I have done that before, but not like extensively. But no, I would just mostly, yeah, I would mostly try to write my own poems, on my own
Inspiration
themes
and
in
yeah.
that style. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Any preferences? Do you do anything differently when you approach poetry versus prose or your advice columns or anything like that?
Hmm.
Do you approach those differently?
Um, no.
Yeah.
No, it's like when, when inspiration strikes, and so forth. Though, it is interesting okay, well, I guess there is a difference. In prose writing, I have to take a lot of notes. They do require, it requires a lot of research, like, especially as like, I consider myself a confessionalist poet. To the extent that that exists today. And I sort of, spell it with a capital C, confessionalist. But um, because those poems are so deeply personal, I'm not. It's pretty rare that I have to do much research or note taking to scaffold those poems.
Right.
But even in just like essay writing, like I do end up like I'm like find myself taking notes like throughout the day and be like, okay, this could fit into an essay about this or that. So, but that's
Yeah.
just a difference of genre. Yeah.
How detailed are the notes? Do you like to get very detailed or do you like to just little jot something down, a little phrases, keywords that you have just for yourself, like your own system or something? Like how do you like to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, sometimes like vocabulary words. Those are more for poetry. I love trying to layer in some like weird diction into a poem. But on a day-to-day basis too, it's just like something weird that you saw, like a piece of like conversation that you overheard, and
Yeah.
that might have some, I don't know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah.
metaphysical import or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We love these details on this show. Yeah, we want to know how writers do their little systems here. Everybody has their own little system.
Hmm.
Another question that we ask every writer that comes on here, and we don't need any specific numbers, but how do you make a living? Do you make any
Hmm.
money off the
Yeah.
literature? 'Cause it's tough out there for writers.
Hmm.
How do you make a living?
So I work as a content writer, for law firms. So I write like law firm websites,
Right.
blogs, newsletters, that kind of thing. And it's actually funny because I would not have gotten that job without my MFA.
Yeah.
And I kind of went into the poetry MFA being like, I expect nothing of it in terms of like professional, benefit. I don't think it'll lead to any job opportunities. If anything, it's going to hinder me, um, but actually that's not been the case. I landed this job, like, and this was like having an MFA in writing was like a big part of it. So
Yeah.
I found it was useful. So
How is that? I've worked for law firms doing
Mhm.
something similar, but it wasn't so much their website stuff as it was I was writing fucking demand letters all day.
Oh, no, no,
You
no,
know?
no.
Yeah. It
Oh,
was like
that's
basically I
oh,
was like a secretary to the paralegals,
yeah,
essentially, where they hired me for the MFA. They saw, the guy who owned the firm was like,
yeah.
"Hey, you got an MFA? That means you can write. We do a lot of writing. Will you be kind of like our writer here?" And I said, I was desperate at the time. I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." I did it for a couple months, and I was like, "Fuck this,"
Oh
like
my
fuck
God, that
this. This
sounds
is killing
brutal.
me. Yeah, it was. It
Yeah.
was. I'd rather do stupid internet blogs or something
Mhm.
for a marketing company than that. Yeah, that is feels less so I don't know. Yeah, but it's good that you're
Yeah, this is closer to just, yeah, it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
sort of
Like
straight
marketing.
marketing.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
it's fine.
That's
It's
uh that's how it always ends up. Yeah, that's how it always ends up for writing degrees. Did you study this in undergrad? I didn't even ask. Were you an undergrad?
no,
No, you didn't
no, I
study writing or
didn't.
literature.
I graduated with a degree in French lit by, the skin of my teeth. But
Can you read French?
yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
still, but
So how many languages do you speak and read in?
so I can read, write, speak French. My last name is French because I was my previous husband. I was with in France. Um, my Chinese is like really basic oral Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm just
But
curious. Yeah, I'm curious.
yeah.
I'm the type of guy that like when I get into a cab
Mhm.
somewhere, and your driver is clearly not American, I'm always the one of the questions asked is how many languages do you speak?
Yeah.
Because they always have like four or five like in their thing
Yeah.
usually because they've
Yeah.
traveled all over the place being refugees or something. So I'm always just curious and I'm like, damn, that's incredible.
How
That's
many languages do you speak?
I only speak one. I study a couple of them, but I would
Mhm.
never say that I could understand bits and pieces of conversations in French and like
Mhm.
I do little exercises for
Mhm.
I say I do it for my field, but now it's just a hobby because I don't really work technically in that field anymore, academia and stuff.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So I just study French, Italian, Spanish, and
Wow.
German,
Wow, that's a
but I would
lot.
never say that I can speak those or
Yeah, yeah.
even write them fluently. I could understand bits and pieces. Like if I was at an airport, I could read a
Gotcha.
sign in some of those languages
Yeah.
or read enough of it that I could decipher what it says.
Mhm.
But I'm not like a fluent. I'd love to be fluent, and that's the goal of me studying
Mhm.
those daily. But it's a tough ask especially when I don't really need it. Like if you're living in France, you
Mhm.
need to like speak and read this stuff. But yeah, I'm just a
Mhm.
hobby here. But yeah, so I'm always curious because I think it affects the brain. It makes you, especially as a writer, it opens
Mhm.
up that repertoire of you can do stuff in these languages. This is what the modernists always did. This is what even kind of the first
Mhm.
kind of people in the kind of postmodern stuff. I'm thinking Baldwin. I'm thinking all these
Mhm.
people that came in the
Mhm.
50s, 60s. French was very big. They were romanticizing the modernists back from the
Mhm.
French days, right? Like it just, yeah, I don't know. It opens up the world to you through these different languages, and it's, a benefit as a writer. So I was just curious. I didn't even plan to ask you that. I was just thinking when you said you had all these different experiences. So, all right, last couple. No, please go on. Please go on.
No, I know. I just like I've recently been brushing up my French because there's a French edition now of Love Is Blind, the reality show. So I love that stuff to sort of just brush up on because you
Yeah.
also get like the slang and the lingo,
Yes.
um,
That's the
especially when it
difference
comes to like
between
contemporary relationships. Yeah. Hmm.
That's the difference between fluency and just not, right?
Yeah.
The colloquialisms, the
Hmm.
slang, the cultural references, these type of things. That's the difference. I always say I do it because, yeah, I'd like to read Proust in French. I'd like to read,
Hmm.
I'm a
Hmm.
big fan of Thomas Mann and stuff, and I've been reading this one
Hmm.
recently. It's translated. I'd love to be able to read it in the original German, although German
Hmm.
translates pretty well to English, so you're not missing that much. But something like French,
Hmm.
you know, all these other languages, Spanish, you are missing something in translation. Like there is something
Yeah.
lost in the
Hmm. Hmm.
translation,
Yeah.
particularly when you get to kind of the Eastern languages, with that these languages that are much older than the Romantic languages or the Germanic languages that have, they don't translate very well. There's just so much missing. You have to do so
Yeah.
much kind of
Hmm.
flourishing. So you're reading a translator's kind of prose instead of it's just whatever,
Yeah.
people, that's just kind of a purist thing for me.
I hear
But
you.
yeah. So that's the goal of it, at least. We'll see if we ever get there. Okay, last couple of questions here, Steph.
Okay.
We like to ask, are you reading anything good, watching anything good, listening to anything good? What's filling your head that you're
Ooh,
enjoying right now? And this could be
yes.
anything. This could be anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know when this podcast is going to come out, but I'm hosting a online book club Twitter space with the fiction writer Anna Krivolapova on October 27th. It is in we're reading. I don't fucking know how to say this. Moravagine by Blaise Cenjars.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's this one.
Okay, how old is
Yeah,
that? When
yeah.
was that?
That is a good question. I think this was like 1926.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
was it French? French modernism?
It was originally in French. I'm reading it in translation. But it's really good. It's like it's one of those like book within a book frames. The
Yeah.
discovered manuscripts or whatever.
And you said that the reality show you were interested in
Oh, Love is Blind.
Love is Blind.
No, what I've been really obsessed with the Alien franchise recently.
Did you watch that
There's
new series?
Yeah,
The Noah, what'd you
Noah
think?
Hawley, the showrunner, he and director of a couple of the episodes, I believe. He lives in Austin,
Really?
and he actually hosted a screening of episode 5, which was the bottle episode, the standalone Alien movie. I loved it.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, it's great.
I saw all the comic book dorks on YouTube and stuff were shitting on it, and I was just like, this is the
Really?
most original,
Oh,
like this is the most original Alien story we've gotten in 20 years. Like, what are you guys doing shitting on it? Yeah, there's
it's
some
so
corny parts,
good.
but like
No,
it's great. Like it was
I
so I was so interested. I loved
who's
it.
your
Yeah.
favorite character?
For me, I really liked the
Yeah.
Timothy Olyphant robot. I really,
Oh,
there
I
was,
love Kirsch.
yeah.
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed
I
with
didn't even mind the boy genius guy.
yeah, yeah,
The end was a little heavy-handed. I get
yeah,
it, but like that's more my literary side of things. But like
yeah,
I like shows like that. Yeah,
yeah.
I thought it was great, and it was unfairly maligned by all those comic book dorks that take up all this space. On I fucking hate comic books. I'm gonna say it right now. I
I
fucking
asked
hate
my
graphic novels, and I fucking don't take anyone who thinks they're good seriously. That's just my. I'm gonna throw it out there for everybody.
we just have a large fandom. Anything that has a large fandom becomes annoying. But yeah,
Yeah,
I asked my husband if he'd bleach his hair blonde because I was like, That's such a great look. Wow." So
yeah.
just that having that white shock of hair, yeah. And obviously a huge fan of the Utani lady. Oh my gosh, she's so cool.
Who is?
The Wayland Utani woman. Um, she's like she's like this badass Asian lady who wears like kimonos and
Oh, right, 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 right,
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The rival company in that
yeah,
yeah, in that what you call it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That was interesting. And I get where people were criticizing that was a little much in terms of like, oh, there's only five corporations, no government. It's like, okay, well, but yeah, so I get that, but it worked. It worked. Noah Hawley's a good writer. Sure, he has stuff that's hit or miss. Have you read his novel? I mean, he writes decent novels. They're kind of pop novels, but
he referred to like during the Q&A he mentioned that he was first and foremost a fiction writer, and
right.
I didn't know that. I hadn't known that about him actually. What would you recommend?
The only one I've read is what's it called? It's called Before the Fall.
Huh.
And it's kind of like a Fox News thing, but it's about this like people that the private jet goes down over the ocean and everybody's trying to figure out there's one guy that survives and they're trying to
Mm,
figure out this guy, is accusing him of doing it. And there's kind of it makes it this was like the 2016-ish kind of, Great Awakening happening. So there was kind of like a Tucker Carlson stand-in character that's like the villain of, the media spinning this stuff. Um, but it was a decent read. It was a page turner. I mean, it was a
cool.
pop genre. It wasn't anything like, oh my God, like this is the most
Yeah.
beautiful prose I've ever read. But I like
Mm,
Noah Hawley, and I think he's a pretty good showrunner for all his stuff that he does. I know people criticize the later seasons of Fargo, but I think those first two seasons of Fargo are fantastic as well. Very well written.
hmm.
Uh, it's so easy to look back. I hate when people do that in the internet. It is so easy to look back, either one with nostalgia or with, scorn and disdain on things that were so good at the time. The thing around I hate online now, I see people that they shit on Breaking Bad and some of these
Mm.
shows now, where I'm just like, okay, like, oh yeah, it was such a bad. Just shut the fuck up. No, it wasn't. It was fantastic. It was one of the best shows ever made. It was brilliantly
100%.
written,
Yeah.
and it is still great. It holds up. Of course, there are a few episodes that aren't great, but it holds up so well, even 15 years later here.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, it sucks. Better Call Saul was better. I'm like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't even close to what Breaking Bad did. And it was much more boring. Like, I mean, did you watch? I mean, I'm not,
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
I love Breaking Bad. I mean, I'm not like an aesthete when it comes to
yeah.
television, so I'm very easy to please. Like, yeah,
I just ask because as a writer, I like
yeah, of
prestige
course.
TV. I like
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I care
yeah.
about who the lines. I care
Right,
about how they're written. I understand somebody wrote these, and there was
right.
a team of people workshopping them together. And that's a craft. That's an art. And the better it is when
Hmm.
you're watching it and you're
Yeah,
having it
for
wash
sure.
over you in that show and stuff. All that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Last question. What are you working on now? What are you working on now? What's taking up your creative energy?
Well, yeah. So let me just use this question to shill my stuff, I guess. Um, I'm I'm primarily I'm primarily like focused on writing essays about the occult and responding to advice column questions on my Substack, which is moonandmouth.substack.com. Um, And then other than that, I'm trying to like host like community events and readings locally in Austin, Texas. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you're doing God's work doing that. I think people don't I ran the reading series when I was in grad school, like for the grad students thing. And, somebody comes in and does that every kind of year. I did it for 2 years
Hmm.
and groomed the next person to come and do it. But it's people don't understand how much work that is and how
Yeah.
thankless
Hmm.
that is yet to organize something like that. But we didn't even get into the occult. What got you into the occult period? And then why is this obsession with the
Yeah.
occult?
I
It's very literary. I
well,
think it's a very literary
oh
obsession.
yeah. I mean, it's everyone. Yeah. I'm like, um, I honestly I don't know what got me again, because I've been into it at multiple points in my life, but I think this most recent run is the most sort of serious so far. I don't know really what triggered it, but um, been into it for a couple of years now, and then and yeah, I'm just trying to explore it more, through the Substack. I recently joined a Thelemite group in Austin. That's like
I don't know what that is. What?
it's the magical order that is like sort of descended from Aleister Crowley and the Golden Dawn tradition. Yeah, I've been talking about that a lot actually on other podcasts, so I don't want to like repeat myself. But yeah,
No, no, no.
that's my latest like area of investigation, I guess.
I would argue it's very romantic. It's a very romantic thing,
It's
the
very
occult.
romantic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mysteries, spirits,
Very
these things.
romanticism.
Yeah, it is a romantic sense. That's the reason the Victorians loved it, coming out of the Romanticism period. Are you a Yeats fan at all?
Oh, yes,
I
of
say he
course.
got very
Yeah.
into that towards the end of his
Well,
life there.
he and
Yeah.
Crowley were rivals in the
Right.
Golden Dawn, and famously, I don't know if this story is, apocryphal or not, but like he kicked him down a flight of stairs. Yeah, so
The literary wars. Yeah, the old of
yeah.
yesteryear. All right, that was fantastic. Steph, handles, you already
Yeah,
said Substack. We have
Moon and
Moonermouth.substack. Your
Mouth.
handles online.
It's also Moon and Mouth. My book is called Cataclysm Moves Me. I regret to say it's available anywhere books are available.
And all of those are linked below as well, listeners. So go click on it, buy yourself a copy, go explore Steph's Substack on there. And again, she's a great Twitter follow. So if you don't want to do that, just follow her on
Yeah.
Twitter and all that,
Yeah.
Instagram. Steph, fantastic. This has been a great
Thank
time. Thank you
you.
for coming on. Please come back anytime. We'll do a poetry book or something, or a prose book
Yeah.
or
Right
whatever.
on.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
of course.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored. I may say the male is entirely hostile. No!
Resources.
Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources, American resources.
Being bored,
Some activities are intentional, right?
it shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I
Heavy.
should say.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.
If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard.